Chapter 8, Sindh. Sindh is one of the most fascinating provinces of Pakistan. Rich history, vibrant culture, and Karachi, the country's financial hub. But at the same time, it's deeply divided. Do you agree Sindh is a land of contrasts?
Absolutely. On one hand, Sindh as Karachi, a global city with banks, industries, and ports. On the other hand, interior Sindh is one of the most feudal and underdeveloped regions in the country. These two Sindhs often feel like separate worlds.
Let's start with history. Sindh has always had a distinct identity, right?
Yes, Sindh's history goes back to the Indus Valley civilization. It has its own language, culture, and pride. Even at partition, many Sindhis were not very enthusiastic about joining Pakistan. They feared being dominated by Punjabis and Urdu-speaking migrants. This historical sense of difference is still alive.
That brings us to Mohajirs. The arrival of Urdu-speaking migrants after 1947 changed Sindh forever.
Exactly. Karachi and Hyderabad saw a flood of migrants from India. Traders, professionals, and middle-class families. They were educated, urban, and ambitious. They soon dominated jobs, businesses, and politics in urban Sindh. Native Sindhis felt sidelined in their own cities.
And that tension later exploded into violence, didn't it?
Yes, especially in the 1980s and 1990s. The Mahajir Qawmi movement, or MQM, emerged to defend the rights of Urdu speakers. It quickly became powerful, controlling Karachi and Hyderabad. But its rise also led to bloody clashes with Sindhis, Punjabis, and even the state. Karachi became a battlefield of ethnic turf wars.
Karachi's story is central to Sindh. How did it become so chaotic?
Karachi is Pakistan's economic lifeline. It generates more than half of the country's tax revenue. But because it attracts migrants from everywhere, Pashtuns, Punjabis, Baloch, Sindhis, and Mahajirs, it's also a city of tensions. Ethnic violence, political militias, and gang wars turned Karachi into one of the most dangerous cities in the 1990s.
So, while Karachi drives the economy, it also creates instability.
Exactly. The state depends on Karachi for money, but often fails to govern it properly. Parties like MQM, PPP, and AMP all fought for control. Even today, Karachi remains crowded, unequal, and politically volatile.
Let's shift to interior Sindh. How different is it from Karachi?
Interior Sindh feels like another world. While Karachi is urban and industrial, interior Sindh is dominated by feudal landlords. Large estates control villages, and peasants depend on landlords for survival. Education is poor, health facilities are scarce, and poverty is widespread.
And yet, PPP continues to win in Sindh. Why do people keep voting for them despite poor governance?
Because of loyalty and lack of alternatives. The Bhutto family is deeply loved in Sindh, especially rural Sindh. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Benazir Bhutto are seen as heroes who gave pride to Sindhis. Even if PPP fails to deliver services, many Sindhis still vote for them out of emotional connection.
But doesn't that blind loyalty hurt democracy? People keep electing leaders who don't improve their lives?
True, but remember, politics in rural Sindh is based on kinship and patronage. A villager doesn't vote on policies. He votes for the landlord who can help him in times of need. It's a survival strategy, not an ideological choice.
That sounds similar to Punjab, but with stronger feudalism.
Exactly. Punjab has a rising middle class that challenges landlords. Sindh doesn't. In interior Sindh, feudal control remains strong. That's why politics there is less competitive and more controlled by elites.
What about religion in Sindh? It has a reputation for being more tolerant, right?
Historically, yes. Sindh is known for Sufism. Shrines like Lal Shahbaz Qalandar attract thousands of devotees from all communities. Hindus and Muslims have lived side by side for centuries. Sindh has one of the largest Hindu populations in Pakistan, and Hindu traders still play an important role in its economy.
But even Sindh has faced religious extremism in recent years.
Sadly, yes. Attacks on shrines, forced conversions of Hindu girls, and sectarian groups show that extremism has spread even to Sindh. The rise of militancy is eroding its old image of tolerance.
Let's return to politics. The rivalry between MQM and PPP shaped Sindh for decades. How did it affect governance?
It created deadlock. PPP controls rural Sindh, MQM controlled urban Sindh. Both mistrusted each other. Instead of cooperating, they fought over resources. As a result, governance in Karachi and interior Sindh both suffered. Roads, schools, sanitation, basic services remained poor.
And what about the army's role in Sindh?
The army has intervened many times in Karachi to control violence. In the 1990s, operations targeted MQM. Later, rangers cracked down on militants and gangs. While these operations reduced violence, they also created fear. Many Muhajirs felt targeted, saying the state was biased.
And yet, PPP continues to win in Sindh. Why do people keep voting for them despite poor governance?
Because of loyalty and lack of alternatives, the Bhutto family is deeply loved in Sindh, especially rural Sindh. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Benazir Bhutto are seen as heroes who gave pride to Sindhis. Even if PPP fails to deliver services, many Sindhis still vote for them out of emotional connection.
But doesn't that blind loyalty hurt democracy? People keep electing leaders who don't improve their lives?
True, but remember, politics in rural Sindh is based on kinship and patronage. A villager doesn't vote on policies. He votes for the landlord who can help him in times of need. It's a survival strategy, not an ideological choice.
That sounds similar to Punjab, but with stronger feudalism.
Exactly. Punjab has a rising middle class that challenges landlords. Sindh doesn't. In interior Sindh, feudal control remains strong. That's why politics there is less competitive and more controlled by elites.
What about religion in Sindh? It has a reputation for being more tolerant, right?
Historically, yes. Sindh is known for Sufism. Shrines like Lal Shahbaz Qalandar attract thousands of devotees from all communities. Hindus and Muslims have lived side by side for centuries. Sindh has one of the largest Hindu populations in Pakistan, and Hindu traders still play an important role in its economy.
But even Sindh has faced religious extremism in recent years.
Sadly, yes. Attacks on shrines, forced conversions of Hindu girls, and sectarian groups show that extremism has spread even to Sindh. The rise of militancy is eroding its old image of tolerance.
Let's return to politics. The rivalry between MQM and PPP shaped Sindh for decades. How did it affect governance?
It created deadlock. PPP controls rural Sindh, MQM controlled urban Sindh. Both mistrusted each other. Instead of cooperating, they fought over resources. As a result, governance in Karachi and interior Sindh both suffered. Roads, schools, sanitation, basic services remained poor.
And what about the army's role in Sindh?
The army has intervened many times in Karachi to control violence. In the 1990s, operations targeted MQM. Later, rangers cracked down on militants and gangs. While these operations reduced violence, they also created fear. Many Muhajirs felt targeted, saying the state was biased.
Chapter 9. Balochistan. Balochistan is Pakistan's biggest province, yet it feels the most neglected. Despite having gas, minerals, and ports, it remains the poorest region. Isn't that a failure of the state?
It's definitely a paradox. Balochistan covers almost half of Pakistan's land area, but only about 5% of its population. It has huge natural resources, natural gas, copper, gold, even Gwadar port, but most of its people live in poverty. The feeling in Balochistan is that the rest of Pakistan, especially Punjab, takes everything and gives nothing back.
And that resentment has fueled repeated insurgencies, hasn't it?
Yes, Balochistan has seen several uprisings since 1948. Tribal leaders and nationalist groups argue that Islamabad exploits their resources without giving them autonomy or benefits. Each time the army crushes the rebellion, but the anger never really goes away.
But why has the problem remained unresolved for so long?
Because it's not just about resources, it's about identity and dignity. The Baloch feel different from the rest of Pakistan. Their tribal system, language, and culture set them apart. They complain that decisions about their land are made in Islamabad, not in Quetta. So for them, it's both an economic and a political struggle.
Let's talk about the tribal system. How does that shape politics in Balochistan?
Tribes play a central role. Each tribe is led by a sardar or chief who controls land, resources, and loyalty. The Bukti, Marri, Mengal, these names dominate politics. When the central government makes deals, it often negotiates with these sardars. But critics argue that sardars themselves keep people backward to maintain control.
That's interesting. So, are the sardars fighting for their people or just for their own power?
That's the debate. Some say the sardars genuinely represent Baloch nationalism. Others say they use nationalist slogans to strengthen their own authority while pocketing money from Islamabad. The truth is probably a mix of both.
Still, ordinary Baloch clearly suffer. Look at education, healthcare, jobs. Everything lags behind the rest of Pakistan. Isn't that proof the state has failed them?
Yes, the state has failed to deliver development. For decades, gas from Sui fueled industries in Punjab and Karachi, while Baloch villages near the gas fields had no electricity. This kind of neglect creates bitterness. When people see their resources leaving but no benefits returning, they naturally feel exploited.
And then there's the insurgency after 2000, when Bukti was killed. That pushed things even further, right?
Exactly. Nawab Akbar Bukti's death in a military operation in 2006 became a turning point. Many young Baloch joined armed groups, seeing the state as an enemy. Attacks on gas pipelines, railways, and even settlers from Punjab increased. The sense of alienation deepened.
Some Baloch even call for independence. Isn't that dangerous for Pakistan's unity?
It's very dangerous. But while a small group demands outright independence, most Baloch want autonomy, fair share of resources, and respect for their identity. The separatist voices are loud, but they don't represent all Baloch.
What about Gwadar Port? That was supposed to bring prosperity. Has it changed anything?
Gwadar is a symbol of both hope and fear. With Chinese investment under CPEC, Gwadar could become a global trade hub. But many locals worry they will be pushed aside, losing their land and fishing rights. They fear outsiders will benefit while they remain poor.
So even development projects are seen with suspicion.
Yes, because the state has not built trust. If past projects benefited outsiders more than locals, why should they believe new promises? Without local involvement, even the best projects feel like exploitation.
Let's compare Balochistan with Punjab. In Punjab, politics is based on patronage, but at least there's some service delivery. In Balochistan, people get neither services nor representation.
That's true. In fact, Balochistan often feels like a colony of the center. Its leaders say, "Our gas fuels your industries, but our children sit in the dark." That sense of injustice is powerful.
And the military presence only makes it worse. Many Baloch say the province feels like it's under occupation.
That's a widespread feeling. Checkpoints, security operations, disappearances, these have created deep mistrust. The state argues it's fighting insurgents, but ordinary families feel targeted. The result is more alienation.
But what about the other side? Some say without the army, Balochistan would be ungovernable. Is that true?
To some extent, yes. The province is huge, sparsely populated, and has active armed groups. The state relies on security forces to maintain order, but the heavy-handed approach creates a cycle. More force brings more resistance.
That sounds like a deadlock. Force doesn't solve it, but without force, things could collapse.
Exactly. That's why Balochistan remains Pakistan's toughest challenge. Neither side fully trusts the other, and both feel trapped.
What about women in Balochistan? Their condition is often highlighted as especially poor.
Sadly, women face double marginalization. Tribal traditions keep them restricted, and lack of schools or healthcare makes life harder. Honor killings, forced marriages, and violence are reported more often here. Women activists exist, but they face enormous risks.
So Balochistan shows the worst of poverty, backwardness, and neglect. Is there any hope?
There is hope, but it requires real change. More investment in education and jobs, genuine autonomy, and fair resource sharing could reduce resentment. But without political will, the cycle of rebellion will continue.
Chapter 9. Conclusion. So, what's the main lesson of Balochistan's story?
The lesson is that Balochistan is both a treasure and a test for Pakistan. It has immense resources and strategic importance, but it also carries deep wounds of neglect. Unless the state treats Balochistan with fairness and respect, the anger will keep boiling.
So, integration, not suppression, is the key.
Exactly. The future of Pakistan depends on making Balochistan feel part of the federation, not a colony. If that happens, Balochistan could be a strength. If not, it will remain a weakness.
Chapter 10. The Pathans. The Pathans, or Pashtuns, have always been a central piece of Pakistan's story. They live on both sides of the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and their tribal culture is famous worldwide. But aren't they also seen as Pakistan's most troublesome community?
Troublesome to some, but vital to Pakistan's survival. The Pashtuns are proud, independent, and deeply tied to their tribal traditions. They make up the backbone of the army, dominate parts of politics, and sit at the heart of the Afghan issue. You can't understand Pakistan without understanding them.
Let's start with geography. How does the land shape the Pathans?
Their homeland stretches from the mountains of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa to the tribal areas and parts of Balochistan. The terrain is rugged, mountains, valleys, and borderlands. This geography made the Pathans tough and self-reliant. It also made central control difficult. That's why outsiders, from the British to Islamabad, struggled to govern them.
And that's where the tribal system comes in, right?
Exactly. Pashtun society is based on tribal codes, especially Pashtunwali. This code emphasizes honor, revenge, hospitality, and loyalty to tribe. Disputes are settled through jirgas, not courts. To a Pashtun, protecting family honor is more important than obeying state law.
But doesn't that create constant conflict with modern institutions?
Yes. That's why the tribal areas, the old Fatah, remained semi-autonomous for decades. Pakistan governed them indirectly through political agents. The state feared interfering too much because that could spark rebellion.
And yet the Pashtuns are also central to the state. Most of the army's rank and file are from Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Pashtuns are everywhere in the police, transport, and trade. Isn't that another contradiction?
It is. On one hand, they resist authority. On the other, they serve it loyally. A Pashtun soldier will fight fiercely for Pakistan, while his cousin back in home may be in a jirga resisting state control. That's the duality of Pashtun life.
Let's talk about politics. The Awami National Party, or ANP, once championed Pashtun nationalism, but it never really threatened Pakistan's unity, did it?
Not in the way Baloch nationalism did. The ANP always demanded autonomy, language rights, and development, but it largely stayed within Pakistan's framework. Unlike some Baloch leaders, most Pashtun leaders accepted that Pakistan was their future. Still, they remained sensitive about identity and rights.
But religious parties like JUI have also been strong among Pashtuns. Why is that?
Because religion fits well with their conservative culture. Mosques and madrasas are essential to village life. JUI clerics often act as community leaders, mediators, and politicians. Their influence grew even stronger during the Afghan jihad when madrasas multiplied with foreign funding.
That brings us to militancy. Many militant groups, Taliban, Haqqani Network, are linked to Pashtun areas. Isn't that why Pathans are often seen as linked with extremism?
Unfortunately, yes.
The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan turned Pashtun lands into the front line. Millions of Afghan refugees settled in Pakistan's Pashtun belt. The ISI, CIA, and others trained fighters in these areas. Militancy became part of daily life. Later, these networks turned into the Pakistani Taliban, who attacked the state itself.
But doesn't that unfairly stereotype all Pashtuns?
Exactly. Most Pashtuns are peaceful, hard-working people. Drivers, traders, soldiers. They work across Pakistan and in the Gulf, sending money home. Only a fraction are militants, but because of global media, the whole community gets labeled. That's unfair and dangerous.
What about the issue of Fatah? For decades, it was governed under colonial laws. Has merging it with Khyber Pakhtunkhwa solved the problem?
It's a step forward, but challenges remain. For decades, Fatah had no real integration. No courts, no modern policing. Militants exploited this vacuum. The merger promises development and legal reforms, but people are still waiting for schools, hospitals, and jobs. Without real change, frustration will continue.
Let's talk about Pashtun migration. Millions of them live in Karachi, working as laborers, transporters, or traders. How does that affect national politics?
It creates both opportunity and tension. Pashtuns are hard-working and vital to Karachi's economy, but their growing numbers worried Muhajirs, fueling clashes between MQM and Pashtun groups. Karachi's ethnic violence cannot be understood without looking at Pashtun migration.
So Pathans are everywhere, in villages, in the army, in Karachi, in the Gulf. Doesn't that make them one of Pakistan's most mobile communities?
Yes, mobility is key. Because of poverty and lack of resources in their homeland, Pashtuns often migrate for work. They adapt quickly, but they also carry their strong identity wherever they go. That's why Pashtun nationalism survives even when they live far from home.
Some people argue that Pashtuns are Pakistan's strength, brave soldiers, loyal workers. Others say they are Pakistan's problem, militants, smugglers, troublemakers. Which is true?
Both, and that's the paradox. They're among the most patriotic Pakistanis, yet also among the most rebellious. They have given Pakistan heroes in the army and politics, but also challenges in militancy and governance.
Do you think Pashtun nationalism could one day threaten Pakistan's unity like Baloch separatism?
Unlikely. Despite grievances, most Pashtuns see themselves as part of Pakistan. They are too deeply integrated in the army, in cities, in politics. Their struggles are real, but they want rights within Pakistan, not separation.
So the real issue is integration with justice, bringing development, schools, and jobs to Pashtun areas.
Exactly. If the state invests in them and respects their culture, Pashtuns will remain loyal. But if they are ignored, militancy and resentment can grow again.
Chapter 11. The Pakistani Taliban. When people hear the word Taliban, they usually think of Afghanistan. But Pakistan has its own Taliban, right?
Yes, and that's a critical point. The Afghan Taliban were originally focused on Afghanistan, but after 2001, a new wave of militancy emerged inside Pakistan itself. These were Pakistani groups, tribal militants, religious fighters, and extremists who came to be known as the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP.
And they turned against Pakistan itself, unlike the Afghan Taliban.
Exactly. The Afghan Taliban were seen as a tool of Pakistan's strategy in Afghanistan, but the Pakistani Taliban declared war on Islamabad. They called the Pakistani state un-Islamic because it allied with the U.S. after 9/11. They launched brutal attacks inside Pakistan, bombings, assassinations, even attacks on the army.
How did they rise so quickly?
The roots go back to the tribal areas, especially Fatah. These were semi-autonomous regions where the state had weak control. After the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, militants crossed the border and found shelter in Pakistani tribal lands. Local tribes, influenced by ideology and anger at drone strikes, joined them.
Soon, a full-fledged movement emerged.
But aren't Pashtuns historically conservative? Didn't their tribal traditions make them easy recruits?
Partly yes. Pashtunwali, the tribal code, values honor and revenge. When drone strikes killed civilians, tribes felt duty-bound to retaliate. Militants exploited this anger, wrapping it in religious rhetoric. They presented themselves as defenders of Islam and Pashtun honor. That combination was powerful.
But what about ideology? Did madrasas also play a role?
A huge role. For decades, madrasas in Pakistan, especially in Pashtun areas, were influenced by hardline Deobandi teachings. Many were funded during the Afghan jihad of the 1980s by Saudi Arabia and others. These madrasas produced thousands of young men ready to fight. After 9/11, that network fueled the Pakistani Taliban.
Let's talk about their actions. What made the Pakistani Taliban so feared?
Their brutality. They attacked schools, police stations, markets, shrines, any symbol of the state or of moderate Islam. They used suicide bombings widely, something new in Pakistan. The 2009 attack on the GHQ in Rawalpindi, the bombing of mosques, and later the 2014 APS Peshawar massacre, all these shocked the nation.
And they also tried to impose their version of Sharia in areas they controlled, right?
Yes. In Swat, for example, the Taliban under Mullah Fazlullah banned girls' education, closed music shops, and carried out public executions. They wanted to create a mini Islamic emirate inside Pakistan. It was a direct challenge to the state.
Why didn't the state crush them earlier?
Several reasons. At first, the military hesitated. Many in Pakistan's establishment thought they could separate good Taliban from bad Taliban, those useful in Afghanistan versus those fighting Pakistan. This confusion delayed action. Also, FATA's terrain was difficult and operations risked heavy civilian losses.
But eventually, the army did move, right?
Yes. From 2009 onwards, the military launched major operations in Swat, Southwest Aristan, and later North Waziristan. These cleared many Taliban strongholds, but the fight was costly. Thousands of soldiers and civilians died, and millions were displaced.
Let's not forget the role of public opinion. Did ordinary Pakistanis support these operations?
At first, opinions were divided. Some people sympathized with militants because of anti-American feelings. But after brutal attacks on civilians, especially the attack on the Army Public School in 2014, the mood shifted. Pakistanis saw the Taliban as enemies of the nation, not defenders of Islam.
What about the connection between the Pakistani Taliban and Afghan Taliban? Were they the same?
Not exactly. They were cousins, you could say. Both shared ideology and tribal ties, but their goals were different. The Afghan Taliban fought to expel foreign forces and control Afghanistan. The Pakistani Taliban wanted to overthrow the Pakistani state. Sometimes they cooperated, sometimes not.
And what about Al-Qaeda?
Al-Qaeda played a key role in training and ideology. After 2001, many Al-Qaeda fighters hid in Pakistan's tribal areas. They linked up with local militants, bringing new tactics like global jihad and suicide bombings. The Pakistani Taliban learned a lot from them.
So in a way, Pakistan became both a victim and a host of militancy?
Exactly. Pakistan's past policies during the Afghan jihad came back to haunt it. Groups nurtured for regional influence turned their guns inward. The state lost control of its own creations.
Has the Pakistani Taliban been fully defeated now?
Not fully. Military operations weaken them, killing many leaders and scattering their fighters, but the movement survives, often regrouping across the border in Afghanistan. Attacks still happen, especially in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. The threat is reduced, but not gone.
So the cycle continues. Violence, operations, temporary calm, then resurgence.
Yes, unless root causes are addressed. Poverty, lack of education, tribal grievances, and foreign influence all feed militancy. Without solving these, the Pakistani Taliban can always find space to return.
What about negotiations? Some argue that Taliban should be brought into talks.
That's controversial. Peace deals in the past often failed because militants used them to regroup. But some experts argue that complete military victory is impossible and talks are necessary. The real challenge is balancing security with reconciliation.
Chapter 11. Conclusion. So, what's the key lesson of the Pakistani Taliban chapter?
The lesson is that militancy inside Pakistan was not imported. It grew from a mix of history, tribal traditions, madrasas, and state policies. The Pakistani Taliban turned into the state's worst nightmare because they combined ideology with local grievances.
And defeating them requires more than guns. It requires justice, education, and development.
Exactly. The army can clear territory, but only good governance can win hearts. If Pakistan fails to reform, militancy will always return under new names.
Chapter 12. Defeating the Taliban. After everything Pakistan went through with the Taliban, the big question is simple. Can they ever really be defeated?
That's the central issue. The state launched operations, killed many militants, and regained control of areas like Swat and South Waziristan. But the Taliban as an idea, as a movement, proved harder to kill than the fighters themselves.
So you mean military victories were temporary?
Often, yes. When the army moved in with force, the militants scattered. But many crossed into Afghanistan only to slip back later. Others hid in cities, blending with ordinary populations. The structure of Pakistan, weak borders, uneven governance, made it difficult to deliver a final blow.
What about the role of public opinion? Did Pakistanis finally turn against the Taliban?
Absolutely. And that was a turning point. In the early years after 2001, many people were confused. Some saw the Taliban as misguided brothers, others as a reaction to U.S. policies. But once the Taliban started bombing schools, markets, mosques, and even attacking children in Peshawar, public anger exploded.
I remember the Army public school attack in 2014. It was like a national shock.
Exactly. More than 130 children killed in cold blood. After that, there was no room left for sympathy. Pakistan launched the National Action Plan, stepped up intelligence, and cracked down on extremist propaganda. That moment united Pakistanis in a way we hadn't seen before.
But if the public turned against them, why do the Taliban still exist?
Because defeating an insurgency is not just about opinion, it's about structures. The Taliban fed on poverty, illiteracy, and injustice. Where the state failed to provide justice, militants stepped in with their own rough version. Where schools were missing, madrasas filled the gap. Until these gaps are closed, militants always have space to recruit.
So it's not just a military problem, it's a governance problem.
Exactly. Guns can win battles, but governance wins wars. Look at SWAT. The army cleared the militants, but people only truly sided with the state when they saw schools reopening, roads repaired, and courts functioning. Without those changes, the Taliban would have returned stronger.
Did Pakistan's politicians play their role in this fight?
That's where the picture gets murky. Politicians often lacked courage. Some feared losing conservative votes. Others hesitated to openly oppose extremists. The army carried the burden, but without political reform, victories remained incomplete.
And what about negotiations? Were there real efforts to talk with the Taliban?
Yes, several times. Governments tried peace deals, like the one in Swat in 2009, but these failed. The Taliban used truces to regroup, then broke their promises. Many Pakistanis came to believe that talking only made things worse.
Still, some argue that peace without talks is impossible.
True. Complete military victory is rare in insurgencies. At some stage, dialogue becomes necessary. But the Taliban's rigid ideology made compromise difficult. They demanded Sharia on their terms, which meant surrendering state authority. That's why talks rarely worked.
How did foreign powers affect this struggle?
Tremendously. The U.S. war in Afghanistan pushed militants across the border. Drone strikes inside Pakistan killed leaders, but also civilians, fueling anger. Meanwhile, Afghanistan's instability gave the Pakistani Taliban safe havens. Pakistan was trapped between being a frontline ally and a frontline victim.
That sounds like the same dilemma we saw throughout Pakistan's history. External involvement creating internal chaos.
Exactly. Pakistan has always been at the crossroads of global politics. The Taliban issues showed that once again. U.S. support helped militarily, but created resentment. Regional politics with Afghanistan and India added more pressure.
But despite these difficulties, Pakistan did achieve some success, didn't it?
Yes, credit must be given. Operations like Rahe-Najat and Zarb-e-Azb destroyed many militant bases. By 2016, attacks had dropped sharply compared to the peak years. Karachi also saw improvement after crackdowns. Life slowly returned to normal in many places.
But the Taliban did not vanish.
True, they adapted. Some shifted bases into Afghanistan, others rebranded, using new names, or merging into splinter groups. Militancy is like a virus. It mutates when attacked. That's why Pakistan needs long-term solutions, not just short-term campaigns.
So what are those long-term solutions?
3 main ones. First, education, especially for girls. Extremism thrives where minds are closed. Second, justice. Ordinary people must feel the courts protect them, not only the rich. Third, economic development. Jobs and services reduce the lure of militancy. Without these, military success cannot last.
Do you think Pakistan is moving in that direction?
Slowly but unevenly. Some areas have seen real progress, but others remain neglected. Corruption and political instability hold back reforms. Still, the awareness is stronger now. More Pakistanis understand that extremism threatens everyone, not just the state.
And what about the Taliban today? Are they weaker than before?
Militarily, yes. Politically, they're isolated. But ideologically, the threat remains. As long as extremist narratives circulate in madrasas, media, and mosques, the danger exists. Defeating the Taliban is as much about defeating ideas as defeating fighters.
Chapter 12, Conclusion. So, after all this, can we say Pakistan has defeated the Taliban?
The honest answer is not completely. The state has won major battles, but the war is not over. The Pakistani Taliban are weaker, but not gone.
Then what's the real lesson?
The lesson is that defeating the Taliban is not only about soldiers, it's about schools, courts, jobs, and trust. If Pakistan builds a fair and inclusive society, extremism will fade. If it fails, the Taliban, or groups like them, will always find a way back.
So the fight is as much about building Pakistan as it is about defeating the Taliban.
Exactly. Victory is not just survival, it's transformation. Only when Pakistan changes the conditions that gave birth to the Taliban will it finally be free of them.
Final conclusion, Pakistan's road ahead. After reading all these chapters, I feel like Pakistan is still standing at a crossroads. It has survived, but survival isn't the same as success. Do you agree?
Absolutely. That's the heart of Anatol Lieven's argument. Pakistan has proven to be tougher than it looks. Many outsiders predicted collapse, but the state endures. Yet, endurance is not the same as progress. Pakistan's real challenge is to transform survival into stability and prosperity.
And what makes it survive despite so many problems? Terrorism, poverty, political crises, floods, even foreign pressures.
The resilience of Pakistani society. Family bonds, kinship networks, religious solidarity, and local communities have kept the fabric from tearing apart. Even when the state was weak, society stepped in. Villages supported each other. Families carried the unemployed. Madrasas, however controversial, gave free food and schooling. These strong societies balanced the weak state.
But isn't that also part of the problem? Strong societies mean people depend more on families and clans than on the state. Doesn't that weaken national unity?
Exactly. That's the paradox. Kinship protects people, but it also blocks reform. Politicians rely on birodari votes. Landlords depend on patronage. Bureaucrats answer to families more than laws. It creates stability, but the price is stagnation. Pakistan survives, but it struggles to change.
Let's talk about politics. Do you think democracy in Pakistan has matured, or is it still stuck in old cycles?
It's a mixed picture. On one hand, Pakistan has had multiple peaceful transfers of power through elections since 2008, which is progress. On the other hand, dynastic politics still dominate. PPP, PMLN, even regional parties rely on families. People vote for loyalty rather than policy. That makes democracy a game of inheritance instead of real accountability.
And the military? From every chapter we've discussed, it seems the military is always in the background, if not in the front.
True. The army remains the strongest institution. It sees itself as the guardian of national unity and security. Sometimes that role prevented collapse, but it also prevented democracy from maturing. Civilian governments were overthrown whenever the military lost patience. So Pakistan's democracy has grown, but under the long shadow of khaki.
What about religion? Has Islam been more of a unifying force or a dividing one?
Both. Islam gave Pakistan its identity at birth. It binds Punjabis, Sindhis, Pashtuns, and Baluch together as one nation. But the interpretation of Islam is contested. Deobandis, Barelevis, Shias, Salafis all claim authority. This has fueled sectarian tensions, and extremist groups use religion to justify violence. So religion is both glue and fuel. It holds the nation, but also sparks conflict.
I feel the same tension in the provinces, too. Punjab dominates, but Sindh, Balochistan, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa all have their grievances. Doesn't this threaten national unity?
It does. Punjab's size gives it weight in the army, politics, and economy. Other provinces often feel marginalized. Balochistan rebels argue they get resources stolen. Sindh's rural-urban divide keeps politics divided. Pashtun areas bore the brunt of militancy. These tensions never ended Pakistan, but they prevent it from becoming a truly balanced federation.
And then there is the Taliban problem. Do you think Pakistan has managed to defeat extremism for good?
The Taliban were weakened, but the roots remain. Extremism grows where the state fails to provide justice and opportunity. If courts are slow, people turn to militants for instant justice. If schools are missing, madrasas fill the gap. If jobs are absent, militancy offers status and money. So unless governance improves, extremism will always find new life.
So, governance is the real key.
Yes, everything comes back to governance. Pakistan has talent, resources, and a strategic location. But without fair governance, transparent courts, efficient services, honest policing, progress will remain limited. Development is not just about GDP growth, it's about trust in the state. Right now, too many citizens trust their families, but not their government.
Let's talk about the economy. Pakistan is often described as struggling but alive. Is that accurate?
Very accurate. The economy has grown, but unevenly. Remittances from overseas workers, especially in the Gulf, provide a lifeline. Agriculture feeds millions. Industry and IT have potential, but corruption, low tax collection, and energy shortages hold everything back. Pakistan keeps borrowing to stay afloat instead of reforming to stand tall.
Some say Pakistan is always looking outside for help. America, China, Saudi Arabia, IMF. Does that dependency make it an aid state?
In many ways, yes. For decades, Pakistan relied on external support. During the Cold War, it was the U.S. After 2001, again the U.S. Later, China through CPEC. Saudi Arabia provided oil and money. But dependency is dangerous. It keeps elites comfortable, but discourages reforms. Pakistan needs to build an economy that can sustain itself, not survive on others' favors.
Yet, despite all this, Pakistan still has strengths. Youth, for example. Isn't that a big hope?
Absolutely. Pakistan has one of the largest youth populations in the world. If educated and employed, they could be a powerhouse. But if neglected, they could fuel frustration and unrest. The youth are Pakistan's greatest chance and greatest risk.
Let's talk about the future. Do you think Pakistan will collapse, survive, or rise?
Collapse is unlikely. Pakistan has proven too resilient for that. Survival is almost certain. But rising, that depends on choices. If reforms happen, better governance, stronger institutions, fairer economy, Pakistan can rise. If not, it will remain trapped, not collapsing, but not fulfilling its promise either.
So Pakistan is like a patient that refuses to die, but also refuses to get fully well.
Exactly. That's why Lieven called it a hard country. It bends but doesn't break. It suffers but survives. The real tragedy is that survival has become the goal instead of success.
Let's end with one clear message. What should Pakistanis learn from all this?
The message is simple. Pakistan's strength lies in its people, but its weakness lies in its state. If Pakistan can match the resilience of society with the strength of institutions, it will not only survive, it will shine. If it continues to rely only on family, faith, and foreign aid, it will remain stuck in the cycle of crisis and survival.
So the real battle is not just against militants, poverty, or corruption. It's a battle for reforming the system itself.
Exactly. And the time to fight that battle is now. The choice is between being a hard country that only survives or becoming a strong country that truly prospers.